The Vikings are immortalized as history's most merciless raiders, yet they harbored a bone-chilling fear of the dark. This paranoia was so intense that when a death occurred at home, the family wouldn't dare carry the corpse through the front door. Instead, they would violently hack a hole directly through the wall, drag the body out through the gap, and immediately seal the breach behind it. They genuinely believed that if the deceased exited through the main door, the corpse would remember the path back into the living world. The suffocating pitch blackness of the northern winters bred a dread that no invading army could ever replicate. High at the top of the globe, winter practically erases the sun from autumn until spring. Coupled with lethal sub-zero temperatures dropping past -30 degrees Celsius, isolated families spent half the year trapped inside a single, smoky room. In that unending gloom, it became terrifyingly easy to believe that something malicious was scraping at the walls, trying to force its way inside. To explain this oppressive reality, the Norse people crafted brutal mythologies. They believed two massive wolves relentlessly hunted the sun and moon across the sky. As winter advanced and daylight bled away, it looked as though the beasts were finally winning the cosmic chase. Beyond the safe perimeter of the hearth, the night belonged entirely to trolls, towering brutal monsters capable of crushing a man to death. The only defense against a troll was the sun, as the first touch of dawn would instantly turn them into solid stone. Consequently, when twilight fell, surviving meant staying barricaded indoors. Terrors of the household and the undead. Yet, seeking refuge inside offered no guarantee of safety. The most insidious threats targeted the Vikings in their own beds while they slept. They called this entity the Mara, a demonic force that slipped into homes at night to sit heavily on a victim's chest, suffocating them through horrific waking nightmares. Caught in a frozen state of panic, where they could neither move nor scream, this experience is what modern science calls sleep paralysis. It is directly from this terrifying entity that we inherit the word nightmare. Norse sagas even claim a Swedish king was crushed to death in his sleep by a Mara invoked by a rival witch, while farmers regularly awoke to find their horses shaking, drenched in sweat, with their manes tangled into chaotic knots. However, the absolute peak of Norse terror was the draugr, a physical, reanimated corpse that climbed out of its grave. Unlike a translucent phantom, a draugr was a swollen, decomposing body endowed with unnatural, monstrous strength. A single draugr could slaughter entire herds, and the most foul among them rotted the surrounding landscapes until entire valleys had to be permanently abandoned. They rose in the dead of winter, easily smashing through barred doors to drag victims into the snow. The only way to permanently vanquish a draugr was to exhume the rotting corpse, sever its head, and burn the remains to ash. The psychological toll of these encounters was absolute. In the saga of the outlaw Grettir, who managed to overpower the undead shepherd Glamour, the dying monster used his final breath to curse his killer. From that exact moment on, the legendary warrior who had slain the beast was left permanently, helplessly terrified of being alone in the dark. This deep-seated terror of the unseen was inextricably linked to their fatalistic worldview, governed by the Norns, the mythical weavers of fate who sat at the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil, spinning the literal threads of human destiny. To the Vikings, a person's lifespan and the exact moment of their demise were predetermined from birth, an unalterable cosmic sentence. In the dead of winter, when the shadows seemed to stretch into monstrous shapes and the paranoia grew unbearable, this absolute belief in destiny became their ultimate psychological armor. They reasoned that if their death day was already carved into the fabric of time, no troll, draugr, or hidden horror in the blackest night could claim them a moment sooner. Conversely, if their time was up, not even the strongest iron-bolted door could save them. This radical fatalism created a bizarre psychological paradox. The very same warriors who trembled at the thought of a restless corpse walking their roof would come spring charge recklessly into a blood-soaked shield wall, with a terrifying, laughing indifference to death, defying the dark, sorcery, and verbal bloodshed. While the community barricaded their homes against the dead, a select few intentionally sought them out through a ritual known as utiseta, meaning sitting out. A Norse seeress would walk out alone into the freezing midnight landscape, climb onto a burial mound, and sit in the pitch black for hours. Her goal was to wake the spirits of the dead and violently pull prophecies and ancient secrets from them. This practice of sitting out to wake up the trolls was so deeply feared that early Nordic legal systems eventually banned it by name. To survive the crushing weight of these endless nights, the Vikings transformed their longhouses into raucous, rowdy sanctuaries. Around roaring fires, they engaged in flyting, the historical blueprint for a modern rap battle. Two individuals would stand before the crowded hall and hurl fiercely personal, poetic insults at one another, completely improvised on the spot. They targeted each other's bravery, physical appearance, and honor. In a society where reputation was the only asset you truly owned, freezing up with no comeback could ruin a person's social standing for years. The true architecture of the Viking Age. Once a year, this pent-up energy erupted into Yule, a massive multi-day winter festival centered around excessive feasting and drinking at the exact time when food resources were scarcest. They sacrificed livestock to the gods, splashing the blood against the longhouse walls to buy a prosperous year ahead. At the height of the chaos, a warrior would place his hand on a sacred boar and loudly swear an oath before the entire room to conquer a specific territory or assassinate a rival. Once spoken, the oath was binding. A hall packed with restless warriors would talk themselves into the next summer's bloody campaigns in the dead of winter, months before a single ship ever touched the water. The raids that would soon terrorize the coastlines of Europe didn't launch from the sea. They were born around a dark winter fire, fueled by ale and a desperate promise. The forgotten labor. Without a room full of women spinning thread in the freezing dark, the Viking Age simply would not exist. Ultimately, the grand engine of Norse conquest relied on a remarkably quiet, ordinary winter routine. The iconic longships were completely useless without their massive wool sails, and a single sail required the wool of over 1,000 sheep. Every single strand had to be hand-cleaned, combed, spun into thread, and woven on massive vertical looms. While crafting the wooden hull of a warship was relatively straightforward, fabricating the textiles took 30 times longer. Spinning the wool entirely by hand was so incredibly slow that the sail for a single vessel required roughly 50 years of collective labor. It took dozens of women working in unison all winter long just to finish a single canvas. This grueling task was so synonymous with women's work that the term spinster, which today implies an unmarried woman, originally meant nothing more than a woman who spins. Strip away the blood-soaked legends, and you are left with a profoundly human reality. A room full of ordinary people huddled around a fire, doing everything they could to fight off their fears of the night.